As we continue to reflect on the 2022 Red Sox season, we brought on Cooper Leonard from the Bradfo Show to not only look at his experience covering this team throughout the season, but also what he's looking forward to for the Red Sox to do during this offseason.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Massachusetts Pirates team insider Jake Ignaszewski, and today we were joined by the co-host of the Bradfo Show, Cooper Leonard, to discuss a little bit about his journey to becoming the co-host on the Bradfo Show, but also his experience covering the Red Sox throughout this season, getting the opportunity to interview guys like Xander Bogaerts, Dustin Pedroia, John Schreiber, and more, as well as what he's most excited for the Red Sox to do this offseason. Let's listen to Cooper and I's conversation. We are here with the co-host of the Bradfo Show. His name is Cooper Leonard. How we doing, Coop?
We're doing great. What's up, Jake?
What's up, man? It's interesting that we're in sort of off-season form. We don't really have to stress about the Red Sox too much more. And now all we really have to do is sort of, I guess, reflect a little bit on 2022 and start looking forward to the future.
I mean, I'm trying to suppress as much of the reflection of 2022 with the postseason right now, just because it's like I don't have to sweat it out, but then I'm also getting Snapchat or Instagram memories of last year. So it's kind of like you wake up with this, oh, baseball was awesome last night, but then you get the notification of you could have had awesome baseball within Boston also. So it's kind of like tit for tat.
Exactly. I got a Snapchat memory from when I was at the ALDS winner against the Rays, and just he seeing my reaction, like let's have them go. I was like, I missed that feeling.
Kike reposting that on Instagram the other day was it was nostalgia in the finest, and I'm glad he's going to be back next year.
Me too.
Man, that was a fun time. That was a
very fun time.
Good time. Fenway rocking.
Especially the wild card too. I wish I was able to go to that game, but that's the most electric I've ever seen a stadium.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to go to that. That was actually my first ever time being at Fenway for a playoff game. And then it was kind of cool because a year later, me and Rob, we got to talk about that game with Xander Bogaerts, on what might have been his last day at Fenway. I don't think it will be his last day at Fenway. Maybe we can get into that later. Who knows? But he even said he was there for David Ortiz 2013 Grand Slam, and he said even the wild card was even like crazier than that night. Which that's hard for me to believe just because of how loud 2013 was on just through the TV.
Yeah. So who are you rooting for this playoff?
Gotta roll with the Guardians. I love Tito.
It.
I've got one of my very good roommates from college. He's a Cleveland guy, so I'm pulling for him in the misery that he has. And who doesn't like to see a curse get broken? They're at what, 76 years right now? 78?
Yeah, sometimes. Especially with how young that team is, it's pretty incredible. I'm rooting for the Mariners just for the story, the drought, the energy that team has. But I got to be honest, like it's nice not really having to stress about the Red Sox during the playoffs.
Oh, it's great.
Just to get to enjoy it.
It's like making picks on Sunday for football, but not throwing any money down. And because it's like, oh, well, if you're right, you're right. And you get the good feeling of it. And then if you're wrong, it's kind of like, well, I was smart enough not to bet.
Exactly. And so you mentioned, you getting the opportunity to obviously join Rob Bradford on the Bradfo Show, and talk to me a little bit how that all came together. Cause it was pretty cool seeing your posts this past week or so. You said a year ago today, I put in my 2 weeks with, zero job prospects and other than just wanting to work in baseball, and you got to interview Xander Bogaerts, as you mentioned on Twitter, but talk about how it all came together for your dream to be able to happen.
Yeah. So I mean, do you want the long story or do you want the short story? There's like two roads that you can go with. Yeah. So to really go back, I mean, just love baseball, grew up playing baseball. How can you not, growing up in this decade, 2 decades of, Red Sox dominance. also, valleys within that. That's the whole one and done structure of the John Henry experience. But it really goes back to college. I had gone to GW, George Washington University, for political science. Ended up getting my degree in political science down there. But while I was down there, I always kind of felt like, dude, I'm not sure if I 100% love this. I'm not sure if this is my end all be all passion, because I knew baseball was always my passion. And being away from home, me and my buddies would always chat and talk like about the Red Sox or whatnot. And we were all into Section 10. And so we were kind of like, well, if Jared Carrabis and Steve Peralt and Pete Blackburn can do it, and this was during the Pete Blackburn years, it was kind of like, well, why can't we do it? And I think everyone has that thought when they listen to a podcast until they actually start one themselves. And it's kind of like, oh, we are really having to do like, notes and record and then edit, and a lot does go into it.
It's a grind.
Yeah, it is. Hey, pat on the back to us, because we're really in the mud. We're doing the difficult work. We might be blue collar. So I did that throughout college, kind of practiced it. It was nothing huge. I think we got about like 20 listeners at most per episode, but like we were still having fun doing it. Pandemic hit. Well, walk us back a little bit. 2018, I meet Steve Peralt at a Red Sox game. DM back and forth like throughout the next couple years and everything, like just being weird internet friends, which is like commonplace nowadays. Pandemic hits. I come home from college. It gives me and my buddies like an opportunity to really like kind of start doing the podcasting thing. And we start cranking them out a little bit more. I invite Steve on. And that was kind of like a big like practice for me in interviewing someone for the first time with a little bit of stature and trying to dig into maybe their background and everything. And I think that also showed Steve that I have a little bit of the guts and the intangibles of podcasting. And it kind of progressed from there. He moves. He didn't really move, but he started to do the Bradfo Show on the weekends with Rob on WEI. And Saturday is a tough time to get callers. So he would hit me up and be like, hey man, like if you have any questions or you want to get on air, like that'd be a great time to do so. So I would call up on Saturday. Oh, voice crack. I would call up on Saturdays and I would either have something from around the league, typically earlier before the season. And then once the season started going, I would just kind of like give my thought like, hey, Bobby Dahlbeck, he's coming up. He might be it. Give him some time. He has had time and he hasn't done great. So that was like throughout the 2021 season. That comes to a close. And then around August, September. So I have a history of anxiety and depression. And the job I was currently doing, I was working at the State House, and it was like really getting to me like every day. I felt like I was having an anxiety attack, and it's nothing to do with the boss that I had. Incredible. The guy, like the manager at the time, I'll say manager, he's really a chief of staff, but it's political jargon. I talked to them about it, and like they were like really cool with it. They actually really tried hard to keep me on, which was nice because I'm always my biggest critic. And essentially like they were just like, hey, like if you really want to try and work in baseball, like we're gonna support you in everything. They stayed like references when I was applying. And like that October 5th, 2021, when I let them know, it was like kind of game on. And for people that have tried to get into baseball or do work in baseball, they know that the end of the season is when application season really hits for, like minor league and major league front offices. And it's tough. You don't hear back from a lot of those places when you send in. Have you had that experience of, sending out, tens and like maybe even hundreds of resumes,
and then the interviews, and then you get super excited, you start thinking in your mind about moving to the place, and then you don't move on,
nothing falls through, and then you're just like, oh, now I got to start this whole thing again, and it gets discouraging. And I was really I had also Steve at that time had left Section 10, and he had talked to me and he was like, hey, like you should really think about submitting I'm blanking on the word right now, but like a tryout tape.
Application. Yep.
Yeah, for his new podcast that he was starting up. And I sent that in. He pulled me in for a tryout with another individual. We both didn't end up getting it. But I found out after, like from him, like that he was going with like this kid, Joey Capone, which at the time I heard the name Joey Capone, I was like, that's a fake name. Which shout out, I don't know if you've met Joey yet or hung out with Joey.
Wicked nice.
Incredible guy. Like I hung out with him a ton this season during games and off days and whatnot. And incredible guy, incredible story as well. I'm not sure if you've had him on here yet, but get him on because he'd be great to talk
I've reached out to him.
Oh, I'll get in his ear. I'll tell him to come on.
Appreciate you.
And so Joey gets that slot, and I was like, when I found out I didn't get it, I was like, dang, like I really thought I had this one. I thought that would have been something cool.
I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Cooper, but I just want to take a second to talk to you about Rhone. And I don't know about you, but I have so much pain and discomfort fitting and also wearing dress shirts. You know, sometimes they're too tight, they never fit, they're just baggy on me sometimes. And it's also such a hassle changing throughout different activities, especially with some of these dress shirts. They're just so tight. I feel like I'm going to rip them sometimes. And I'm just looking for something that not only looks good, but feels good as well. So Rhone actually radically reinvented the dress shirt, and they stepped up to the challenge to make the Rhone computer shirt. And it's the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible shirt known to man. And here's why. They have a 4-way stretch fabric that provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws at you, from your commute to work to your 18 holes of golf. So now it's time to feel confident as you stretch and wear the shirt. It's that easy. And with their wrinkle release technology, wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the t-shirt. It's that simple. And with their Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long. And on top of that, Rhone is 100% machine washable, so you can dish the dry cleaner all together. And Rhone also gives you the ability to not only feel comfortable while wearing your dress shirt, but also have the mobility to just be able to do regular things. And so you don't feel like me to where you're just going to rip it off, kind of, I guess, like Superman. But the commuter shirt can get you through any workday, straight into whatever comes next. So head to Rhone.com/lockedon and use promo code LOCKEDON to save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head over to RHONE.com/lockedon and use the promo code LOCKEDON. It's time to find your corner office comfort. So go and check out Rhone today. Now let's get back into my conversation with Cooper.
And then a matter of a couple of days later, it was January 1st, so New Year's Day. I have Rob slide into my DMs and he's like, hey, like, if you could give me a call, I have some ideas for what I'm doing for a book and everything. And I like what you do on social media, which all I did on social media was just that. Are you allowed to swear on here?
I'll bleep it.
Okay. Well, no, I put out memes. I was going to say the other S post. But that's all like I really did. Like I was just making memes for like the 2021 playoff run, and he would sometimes like it. And what he ended up having in store, I talked to him later, and it was that he was writing a book with Joe Kelly, which is now out on Amazon Prime. The official release date for the hardcovers will be in March. But he basically at the time he was like, hey, like it's the pandemic right now, or it was after the pandemic at that point. It was still kind of getting through. But it was during the lockout, and he was like, this is a perfect time to talk about like why baseball isn't boring, which the baseball account BB isn't boring, which I help run, and I do more of my memes there. So I was like, yeah, why not? Like I have nothing else going on. I'm still like applying to other jobs and everything, and this would be a good way to get my foot in the door. So I start doing that for him, and he also adds in, he was like, hey, like every once in a while, like if you want to hop on the Bradfo Show or post for the Bradfo Show, like that'd be great. And I was like, awesome, I can do that. Because like ever since I even started like the whole like politics thing, when I graduated high school, like my number one thing is like availability. Like the more you make yourself available to your employer or to your whoever your higher up is or your company itself, it shows that you're reliable. And even if you aren't like the best at what you do, it shows that you're willing to either A, get better, or B, just be there to help them out. And that, I think that goes much further than anything else like that you can bring to the table. And that's what I took into this whole podcasting thing. It was, I'm going to work part-time jobs. I'm going to, be financially unstable right now because like this is an incredible opportunity that I have, especially with Rob and like the connections that he has and the players that he can get, that if I can be on like a podcast just to ask like one question to like Travis Shaw, like I'm going to do that because it's a repetition, and B, it's putting your name out there and it's showing that you're able to do it.
Exactly.
Which, no offense to Travis Shaw, I only dunk on Travis Shaw there because I gave him an easy question and he did not go for it. And that's how I've been all season, and it really has worked out. So far, I mean, I'm still fighting for pay and everything, and that's something everyone does, and that's something that I hate to harp on, but I mean that is a reality for anyone that tries to get into this. You should do it because you're passionate about it. You should do it 100%. Like it shouldn't. If you're doing this for money, like tough news, dude. Like exactly. You got to really scrape for it. But if you absolutely love what you do, like you're gonna be like me, and you're gonna have an absolute ball this year. Like I've gotten to have experiences this year because of Rob and because of Steve looking out for me earlier on. That like I'll be able to look back and be like, yeah, like. If it doesn't work out and I set myself back a year or two professionally, like if I go back to government stuff, it would all be worth it because like I have all these memories and everything that I've been able to create out of this, and dialogues that I got to ask Mike Trout a question this year that
that's like, crazy.
The New York Post was ended up like using for a story, which that in its own is really cool and something I can tell people down the road like I was able to do and challenge myself to do. So long-winded version there. That's who I am, and that's who Coop is.
I love it, bro, because I think that's not only inspirational for somebody who wants to get into sports or somebody who just doesn't know where their life is going at this moment in time. And you and I have a very similar background. Prior to us recording this podcast, we've never really talked in depth, and I appreciate you being vulnerable about your struggles with anxiety and depression. I deal with the same exact stuff, and
dude, you got to normalize it.
Exactly.
I do my best to see a therapist as much as possible. It's
100%
something you should talk about. Like it's the meme society, like in a utopia, like if X, Y, and Z, and in this case, it's if people just went to therapy as much as possible.
So we actually do a segment on the podcast. It's the mental health minute, and we try and if something comes up in our lives, we try and speak about it, and say any words of wisdom. But I'm somebody prior to getting this opportunity to be a co-host of this podcast. I graduated college, did a great summer job, had the opportunity to be on Nesson, and then worked at Dunkin' Donuts for 4 months and was at my lowest. And, then Lauren, sent me a message, invited me to, be a part of the podcast, and, same exact thing. I sometimes, pinch myself looking back at the opportunities I had this season, and it's pretty incredible, the things that we get to do. But at the end of the day, everything happened for a reason in our life so that we could get to this point.
It's always at a Dunkin' Donuts where you find your moments.
Hey, they kept me running too.
I mean, it's in their motto.
Yeah, exactly.
You figure they should. But I love to hear that, man.
And so for you, being able to, interview all these different players throughout the season, is there anyone outside of Xander Bogaerts, because you mentioned that on your Twitter, it was incredible to have the opportunity to speak with him multiple times. But is there anybody in your mind that like sticks out that outside of Mike Trout, as you mentioned too, that you got to, that was some of your favorite interviews?
Easily Pedroia.
I love it.
Like Pedroia is like the guy that molded me, like to be like I brought up earlier, like just being around, like making yourself like available to whoever. And like as cheesy as it sounds, it's like Dustin Pedroia instilled that in me when I was a little kid. And it is because like I always think back to him taking reps like from a chair or from his knees with a broken foot. And like I always looked at that as like, hey, like there really is no excuse for you not to get something done or to better yourself at. Um, so yeah, like that's just kind of like the philosophy I take into life. It's just kind of, it starts with Pedroia and it ends with Pedroia. And it's kind of like if you give your effort, if you give your all, then you can't look back and say like I didn't do what I was supposed to do, because you could fail, but as long as you put that effort in, like you can't be upset with yourself.
I
So,
love that. Yeah.
Long-winded getting to talk to Pedroia, and like, I mean, you can go back. I have it posted on my Instagram as well, where I straight up just I was like, hey man, like thanks for just like being awesome, and I just get a smile out of him, and he's like, thanks, dude, and I was just like, all right, that's cool. This can all end right now, and I'd be fine.
He's actually, on my vision board and one of the top people I've always wanted to interview. He was a role model for me growing up. I was always told that I was too small in baseball. And, I just used the Dustin Pedroia motivation just to go out there, grind and be gritty and just, put your all into sort of every single play. So that must have been pretty incredible to be able to talk to him.
He's a dog, to put it lightly. Like there was a point where I talked about I believe Rob had brought it up, the Derek Jeter documentary, because that was hot when we interviewed him, and he was like, yeah man, like if I didn't have this thing going on with my leg, like I went right to the batting cage after and I took some hacks, and I was like, I could be leading the league in hits right now if it wasn't for the knee. So it's kind of like there's no one I want to see fail in the playoffs right now more than him right now. I want to like the Padres. Trust me, I really want to like the Padres, but Manny Machado makes it difficult. So yeah, I will always like remember, and like I will always thank Rob for setting that up and putting me in connection with him.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And especially
so is he your white whale?
Yeah. Yep,
okay.
He's my guy. Him and Bryce Harper, probably. Bryce Harper, like growing up, like with baseball, seeing him on Sports Illustrated and everything like that. I have a Bryce Harper Phillies jersey as well. And, I was going to be rooting for the Phillies in the NL, but after I saw the Dancing on My Own thing, there's absolutely no way that's
really
happening.
That turned you? Like, just because it's a special Red Sox thing that can't go on forever?
I was just frustrated that they could have picked any one of the billion songs that are out there, and they decided to just pick that one singular one. I don't know. To me,
was that a Schwarber doing? Did Schwarber bring that into the clubhouse?
I wouldn't be surprised, but when I watched that, it sort of gave me the feeling of Red Sox fans, you guys aren't in the playoffs. Ha ha ha! Look at you. Like I felt that.
That's not the intentional thing. I more so look at that as like a bad omen. It's like, hey, that didn't work out for another team. Like, find it. Oh, Bryce. Sorry, I'm also watching the game right now. Bryce Harper up, very topical. I got faked out by the camera. There was a fly out to Ronnie Acuna. But yeah, sorry. I did the same thing the other day with John Schreiber on air. We were talking to him during the Cleveland Rays game for game 2. The 15-game inning, and Oscar Gonzalez hit his solo home run in like the middle of the interview, and like I just like yelped, and I was like, I'm so sorry, like John, but this game's incredible.
That's amazing.
How
is he?
He's awesome, dude. I mentioned it earlier to you that like Rob has this cadence to just like bring guys on and get them to start talking like they're just dudes. And one of the things was that he brought up the 2013 World Series. And John Schreiber's from Detroit, if people don't know, and he's a massive Tigers fan. So getting to be drafted by him, and we talk about that in that interview. Bradfo Sho, go ahead and follow that. Just plug. But John talks about that, and he was just like, I remember seeing Ortiz hit that home run, and he just started like throwing stuff around his room, because he was like a freshman in college at that time. And it was funny to hear that. And it's nice to hear that from baseball players, because you never know if like baseball players actually enjoy what they do, because and we talk about this with Rob's book. And it's kind of like, it's difficult for players to really enjoy what they do because they do it all the time, and it's 162 games, and you do anything for that long, you're just gonna kind of get deadened by it. I mean, Mookie Betts went on the Tonight Show with Jimmy Kimmel this past week, and he even said like he wasn't going to be watching playoff games because he's a baseball player and he's around it all the time, which not going to lie, as an idiot fan that likes baseball as much as myself, and I'm watching all 12 hours of playoff baseball every day that it's on, it stinks hearing these players that are the faces of the sport say that.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
completely agree.
it's nice when you hear a player actually enjoy baseball.
Yeah, I actually heard Austin Riley talking about that he watched every single wild card game this morning. He was on the Rose rotation, and so it's also interesting to hear with baseball players or any athlete, especially when they get out of the game, they don't know who they are because they're just so elapsed in it. But baseball more than others, you're really into every single day, and the 162 grind, and we both understand that, covering the team, we don't put the work in, we're not in the weight room, mentally doing all that sort of stuff, but we cover it, and especially I guess for you and I covering this season, how was your experience? I enjoyed it. There was a lot of roller coaster up and down emotions, but it was fun for the first season. I guess it was eventful, I could say.
Definitely eventful, especially in July and right before the trade deadline. It got to the point where there was news all the time, but it was news that you didn't want as a fan, like whether it was Jaren Duran, having his fits, which you covered AAA and probably saw him a lot more. I'm actually, where did he spend more time? How many games did he have at each level?
I think it was more in Worcester.
That's
but
what I
something
thought,
that
because it was probably close. He really
Yeah.
did like 50-50.
Well, what's so weird is, and I understand this, with the mental aspect with him, because obviously he came out with his struggles with mental health, and he was just able to be himself down in Worcester, and then up in the majors, he felt like he had to fit a certain mold, and he couldn't fully be himself. But it was interesting as well, his second stint down in Worcester, he was dancing around, he was doing all this stuff, but it was also kind of interesting too, because there was also situations where he showed his immaturity as well. There was, I think it was the second or third last game of the season. There was almost a brawl that broke out at the end of the game, and Jaren's over there going like this, and I'm just thinking to myself, you got sent down because of that. Like, learn, bro.
And Cassis has a little bit of that in him as well. Maybe it's a little bit less rage, and maybe he's the better player, so he doesn't really get as scrutinized. But like just the comments that he would make after, and this isn't me trying to get, like, this isn't the Cooper Gets on Jaren Duran podcast. This is me just kind of voicing like the frustration from the season. Is just like, sometimes you just, like, if you have a bad game, just take your lumps. Like, it comes back to the whole Pedroia thing and holding yourself accountable. Like Pedroia would have bad games, but you would never see him come out and just be like, hey man, like, you try and play my position. Though that is kind of a Pedroia thing to say. But I don't think he would ever outright come to like the media and be like, you guys can't talk to me about this. And it's like, hey man, like, this is what happened in the game. This is what happens at this level. You got to talk about it.
Right. That's the unfortunate thing too. When Lauren and I covered that, I tried my best, see the benefit of the doubt, but we're not talking about a 22, 23-year-old player. We're talking about a 26-year-old almost going on 27. And, maybe that's me just generalizing with what I believe, his mind state should be at that certain age. But I really hope he's able to figure it out. But, it's really just him being able to, I guess, figure out the mental side of the game now, because that's the one thing that I see between him and Cassis is Cassis was the most mature AAA player, I talked to, at least at his age. We hope that you did enjoy my conversation with Cooper, but that was part one of our convo. Now, make sure to get ready for part two, which is going to be dropping tomorrow, as Cooper and I look a little bit more into his thoughts on what the Red Sox should do during the offseason, and he gives a few predictions as well. So make sure to go out and check that out on Friday. But we also want to hear your thoughts on what you want the Red Sox to do during the offseason, and also some other guests that you want us to get on the podcast throughout this offseason. Make sure to go over and let us know that over on our Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. You can also follow us over there, because we'll be posting all throughout this offseason, trying to get you ready for the 2023 campaign. But You can also follow myself. It's at Jake Iggy, and also Lauren. It's la, 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But we also greatly appreciate you making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. Now you can make your second listen Locked On MLB. Paul Francis Sullivan, please call him Sully, gives you his passion and his humor to cover everything that you need to know about Major League Baseball. You can go over and check out that podcast on Odyssey or wherever you get your podcast. But as I mentioned, Part 2 of my conversation with Cooper will be coming out tomorrow on Friday, so make sure to check that out. It's a great convo, but we will end it here as we always end it. Let's go Sox.